isn't this just fantastic? Captain's log, subdates 210209.3. After inspecting the ISO cubes, I've noticed 3 inmates had attempted to break out by removing some of the wool resin. These particular inmates have been selected for a project called the Caterpillar. Welcome everyone to the Halls of Injustice. Today we have inmate number 058, Shane Mays. He's in for a lengthy stay, and for his particular crime, there is no escape. Unless you're a UK court, in which case, there is a possibility of it. For this story we need Louise Smith, a 16-year-old girl, who had a rather fractured relationship with her mother Rebecca and stepfather Richard O'Shea. It had gotten to the point that Louise Smith moved in with her aunt and step-uncle. The step-uncle in this is in fact Shane Mays. Louise Smith did have a number of learning difficulties and social issues. She was considered quite a vulnerable young lady, so it was thought that perhaps her aunt and uncle, step-uncle, would act as suitable guardians for her, while she pursued a career as a veterinary nurse. However, not long into moving in with Shane Mays and her aunt, a number of issues arose, more notably the size of the apartment. But there was another, equally notable. It was how inappropriate Shane Mays acted towards Louise Smith. Some of this was in fact shown in court, via Snapchat videos of him pinning her down and tickling her feet while she was conversing with others, or attempting to. This has also been confirmed because Louise Smith took this to one other person in the form of her boyfriend. Understandably, this was obviously raised in court. We'll get to it soon. Skip ahead a little bit of time. On VE Day, the 8th of May for those who don't know, Louise Smith went missing. It took 13 days and a rather extensive community and police search which involved the family helping with this search. 13 days into this search, she was eventually found in the Havant Thicket, which is a woodland area, deceased and defiled. So what had happened to Louise Smith? Well, and this didn't take long to find out. Shane Mays had lured Louise Smith to the Havant Thicket to, air quotes, talk. Now the prosecution had believed that sexual assault and drugs were on the menu, but those are accusations. When the conversations then failed, he repeatedly punched Louise in the face, which he admitted he did feel bones crack. He then violated her once he was sure she was dead with a stick, before burning her body, walking home, popping into Iceland to get a pizza, seen here, and carrying on his merry evening of 9 hours a day video gaming on the Xbox. Because if it isn't obvious enough, yes, he was a bum. So when I earlier mentioned the family were involved in the search, he was in fact involved in the search, which to an extent did throw the trail off him very briefly. I'm starting to understand why morons like this don't think too far ahead when it comes to concealing. He probably thinks they just vanish, like in GTA 5. As I said, it didn't take long for him to be caught and then put on trial. James Newton Price QC, who was the prosecutor, told the trial at the Winchester Crown Court a determined attempt had been made to destroy her body, which was so badly burned and damaged by fire as to be unrecognizable. Her body had been subjected to extreme violence and violation, including repeated and heavy blows to her head. Louise was just 16. She was anxious, needy, fragile, and vulnerable. Vulnerable to the attentions of a predatory man who was apparently flirting with her and living in the same small flat. When Shane Mays was placed on the stand to answer questions, for example, why he carried on striking Louise, he said, "I just carried on. I lost control of myself. She made a moaning noise. That's when I stopped." Shane Mays was subjected to a clinical review where they discovered he had an extremely, air quotes here, extremely low IQ of 63, which is 62 more than I actually expected. which puts him in the bottom 1 percentile of people. I'm sure someone's now going to try and use that for diminished responsibility, because he's stupid. He also has a personality disorder. There is still no valid excuse for what you did, Shane. After a very short trial, a unanimous decision was reached, one that was celebrated in the galley by the family, of guilty. When sentencing, Mrs. Justice May said, Shane Mays was in a position of trust in relation to Louise. Theirs was like a father-daughter relationship. That being, he committed the most gross abuse of trust. I am not persuaded his learning disability tempered this in any way, as Shane Mays plainly recognized Louise was young, had mental difficulties, and was in his and CJ's care, CJ being the aunt. The sudden death of any person is tragic, but the death of a vulnerable child is particularly grievous. Louise's mother, stepfather, and biological father all gave separate statements. Rebecca Cooper, Louise's mother, did raise one very interesting point in her statement, saying, "You came to my house the day you killed her. You looked me in the eyes with no remorse when you knew what you had done was pure evil. You have made us relive what you did to Louise." There is another little detail I've left out, one that I found quite astonishing. How was Shane Mays caught? That low IQ was one thing, because it turns out there was some blood on his shoes. But there was something else. A 1,000,000,000 DNA match found on the stick he used in Louise, which had his DNA on it. That is one of the biggest oofs I think I've ever come across. The impact statement from her biological father, Bradley Smith, focuses quite heavily on the damage it has done to everyone around, and the consequences the entire family will experience because of Shane Mays. The lack of communication and the turmoil this will undoubtedly have created. Louise's stepfather focused on the life he got to have with Louise Smith in it, how he felt as father to her. During the entire trial, there was one thing about Shane Mays that really stuck at people, and it was the fact that no matter how often he was accused of something, no matter how often a victim impact statement was read to him, he had a smirk on his face akin to that of Gomer Pyle from Full Metal Jacket. It's just a shame there wasn't a drill sergeant in front of him. So Shane Mays is found guilty. He's definitely looking at a custodial term for admitting manslaughter, although we can all be certain it's a bit more than that. Shane Mays was sentenced to life in prison, which makes it seem like he'll be out in 12.5 years on good behaviour. No, he actually has to serve a minimum term of 25 years before he is eligible for parole. My view, and it will always be the same with these kind of cases, although this one is a little unique, is life, without the possibility of parole. You get to go into your little Lego block ISO cube. They are on the way, by the way. You'll get to see them soon, I promise. You'll have nothing on your feet. You'll be walking over Lego blocks your entire life. Hell, your bed's going to be made out of Lego too. And when you get used to the angles, we'll change them by shaking it. Get in your cube for the time being. You'll be moved soon. With this case, I do want to know what you think. Please do let me know in the comments down below. If I don't see you on Twitch tonight, have a fantastic day. Thank you all for listening.